Hi, we'd like to welcome you to the Alpine School District Transition Week and our presentation tonight with Vocational Rehabilitation. Um, they, we have Amanda Brown and Catherine Owen. They're both vocational rehabilitation counselors that serve different schools within Alpine School District, and they work with a lot of students. And so they're going to do an overview of the services that vocational rehabilitation has to offer. So again, if you have questions, please put them in the chat box and we will make sure that we get them answered. We've muted the mics, but if we have time at the end, we can unmute and give you an opportunity to talk to the counselors personally. So we will first turn time over to Amanda Brown.
I am so excited to be here tonight. I do enjoy going to the transition night where we are able to meet parents and students together, but this is something we can do. My name's Amanda Brown. I've been with vocational rehabilitation for 14 years. I've worked with youth for about 8 of those years, and it's been really fun. The important thing that I find with vocational rehab is that parents need to know what the options are for their students after high school and post high. Um, I myself, being a parent of a very entertaining ADHD autistic child, I noticed that a lot of the accommodations that I was being told by the schools were not being shared with other parents, and Voc Rehab is one of them. So, first and foremost, I want to let everyone know that it is their right as a parent to ask for Voc Rehab to be there at the IEP or the 504s. We find that if we wait for the schools to invite us, sometimes that doesn't happen. So if you feel that this service, vocational rehab, is something you're interested in, please let the school know, and you can even call the local office and they will send a counselor to the meeting, either via Zoom or in person. So, vocational rehabilitation is a state agency that has state and federal funds that help individuals with any type of disability from the age 14 on to find employment. That's our biggest goal. Um, that being said, a lot of people say, why are you working with 14 and 15-year-olds when they can't work? Well, we want to make sure that we can get them ready for work. Even at 14 and 15, we have some services like social groups and things like that that will be explained a little bit later, that they can start learning so that once they start working at 16, 17, or 18, that they'll be a little more ready. So we help individuals with barriers. So for example, with some of our students, we have specific learning disability. We may have depression or anxiety or some other mental health issues. uh, Anybody with a physical disability. And again, it's from 14 on, it's not from 14 to 18 or 22. We continue helping them even into adulthood, as long as they're able to reach an employment goal. That can look like anything from just getting a job after high school or even continuing their training. If they are able to go to college or to a trade school, we do help with that as well. I want to make sure everybody understands, though, that there is a financial contribution sometimes. We have a financial form that we go through with our students and our guardians, if they have a guardian, that explains where they are financially and what we can do to help. Um, we would have to have some kind of proof of disability, and a lot of parents have a hard time with that when it comes to finding that proof. If your student has a pediatrician, if they're under 18 or even 18, has a pediatrician that treats them for the disability, um, then we could have easily as a letter from them saying, I see John for whatever the disability is, and for this long, and they're signed. Because a lot of parents come to me and they really worry about what kind of documentation that they can get. We also can help for those students, for example, that have a learning disability. We can help by paying for a psychological evaluation. And we do have some professional vendors in the Utah County and Salt Lake County area that do the assessments to make sure we get the needed information. But we have an application And I will put in the chat the website to get to the application. There's a welcome video as well. Then we can have you call the office, our local office, and schedule an intake appointment. What's important at that point is you tell the school you tell our office what school your student goes to, because there's certain counselors have assigned schools. At this time, anyone from who goes to Cedar Valley or Westlake or Rockwell Charter, they do go to the South Jordan. It's called South Valley office. It's in South Jordan, unless they have a specific need to come to the Provo office. And you just need to let the person who answers the phone, let them know, I would like to be serviced out of the Provo office, or I can give you the phone number for the South Valley office as well. We just want to make sure parents know what's available for their students. We don't like it. I personally don't like it when I see the youth out there and they're not getting the opportunity that they would really, really need to get that job that they want. I've had some students tell me they just want to work as a cashier, and that's fine. I've had other students tell me that they want to be a graphic designer, and we try and help to get them as close to that, if not that we can. Right now, we have a lot of opportunities for growth. We can help with different programs, like I said, social classes, different types of work opportunities. I'm going to pass the mic over to Catherine, and she can talk about some of those services that they can try for that may not require vocational rehabilitation fully, or you can use these services as well as being a Voc Rehab client. So go ahead, Catherine.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, so I wanted to talk a little bit about what we call pre-et services or pre-employment transition services. So Amanda's touched a little bit on this, but specifically services in that 14 to 21 range. And the idea behind these services is that if we can get middle school and high school and post high schoolers involved in activities and experiences to kind of prepare them for work. So maybe they're not quite ready for a job, but they need to work on exploring jobs or building self advocacy skills or social skills, like Amanda had mentioned. So that's kind of the goal, is to get involved and start kind of building those skills up, so when they have those work experiences, they can be more positive and beneficial for them moving forward. So there are two ways that we provide these types of services. The first is with the VR counselor. So one of the big things that we do is attending those IEP meetings, so that we can be involved in that team process and making sure that parents are educated on what we can provide. The VR counselor can also provide some kind of exploration activities one-on-one with the students, or even groups in schools, which is happening a little bit less currently, unfortunately. Then there's also some contracted services that can provide these services, that you can be working with Voc Rehab and we can kind of refer you to these programs, or you can actually contact them on your own. As long as the student has a disability, they qualify for a 504 or IEP, they can access some of these services, which is pretty cool. I've seen both where I've referred a student to some of these programs, or the other way around, where they've been involved with some of these different pre-et programs and then they've kind of come to us. So there's information specifically on the website about that. I could also put that in the chat if you want to access that. But really the goal with this is just that we're giving students more opportunities to have experiences and exploration, so that they can be successful in employment in the future. Yeah. That's most of what I wanted to cover. Um, do we want to open it up for questions? I see that there.
Yeah, so we have a couple of questions. One, going back to what Amanda was talking about. Sorry, Amanda. Would the students need to get a diagnosis even when they have an IEP?
Yes, so the IEP is great information, but we do have to have something from a licensed professional, that someone that can diagnose. So sometimes that's a hard thing with schools, is the IEP gives great information, but we do need that physical diagnosis by a physician or a therapist. Um, for eligibility purposes. If the student is on Social Security, we can utilize verification through Social Security. So that can help in some cases. If they're on Social Security, they're presumed eligible for our services. So that streamlines things quite a bit.
Okay, thank you. Another question that Amanda answered was, do you work with individuals during the summer? And Amanda said yes. So Voc Rehab programs run all year, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And then also for families to know, there's not an age limit as far as they can't be too old, right?
That is true. Yeah. I have a client right now that's 75. So yeah, we cover all ages for sure.
And then I know a common question that I get from families too is if they've worked with rehab and they've helped vocational rehabilitation has helped them get a job, does that and their services, or so if you close their case, can they come back? I know the answer, but maybe you can explain that a little more.
Yes, they can. Our goal is to have them employed so that we can close them successfully. And just for some parents, we're short-term services, so we would help them find the job, learn the job, and then move on. Some parents who have services from the Department of Services with people with disabilities, that helps with the long-term supports of, for example, a job coach who can be there at the job. But our goal is to have them close successfully so that we can say, yes, look, they were able to get a job, they're doing something they like. If down the road, of course, that person doesn't want to continue that job and they want to grow or change jobs, they can come back. They would have to reapply, and they would probably have to get a different counselor, and that counselor would work with them and talk about what jobs they want now. So they
Okay.
can. There's no age limit.
Perfect. Okay, another question is, do you share information with DSPD, Division of Services for People with Disabilities, more for the diagnosis purpose?
We do share information with them. If their caseworker is willing to give us the diagnostic information, that's great. Sometimes it's hard for them to gather that information, but we can, as long as there's a release of information signed stating that we can communicate within agencies. Yeah, we can get that. We can get that done.
Okay, perfect. And then another question, how long does it typically take your department to process from going from the application to getting a job?
That is very,
That's a
very
good
hard to
question.
answer. It is all individually based, and so there's different factors. There's the disability, there's limitations, there's um, the types of jobs they want to do. I can't give like 6 months, 9 months. That's why sometimes we want to really get into to the schools and get into with parents the IEPs, because if we could just educate the parents and the student, that way they're ready, and then we can start moving. I I attend ATEC East or West. Sorry, Catherine does ATEC East, and I really enjoy going in. I talk to the students in the classrooms. I get to know them. So when their parents are ready to sign up for services, and again, it's not required, but if they do sign up for services, I already know a little bit more about their student, and I can help with some of the barriers that might be not evident for everybody. So I have had with transition age youth, we usually keep them for a long time. We keep them on our caseloads typically till they're out of high school or out of post high and they're working successfully. For the students that are resource students that have a specific learning disability, that can go as fast or as slow as they want to go. We have some seniors that do trade school, for example, for their senior year if they have all the rest of their credits caught up. And we can help monitor, make sure they're getting accommodations at the trade school. And then they just have to call. And if they find a job on their own, that's great. If they need help finding the job, we have people that can do that. And then when they're ready, they can call and say, I'm really done. I don't need to continue working with Voc Rehab. I'm happy. I think I'm going to stay at the job for a bit. And then we close them successfully. So there's no time that I can give you comfortably, but it just depends on who the person is and their abilities.
All right. And this question goes along with what you just were saying, just a little different twist. If a student has a VR goal in their transition plan, I would imagine, to have a job right after high school, but then changes his mind and decides to go to college before working, can the goal be changed and the student stay with VR through college and starting a career after?
Yes, we can. In fact, we have a lot of students who do that. Some students, once they're done with high school, they want to move on and be an adult. And if they finally think, maybe I need some training for this, we can keep them. They don't have to reapply if they're already a client, and they can go on to college. And again, in college, some of my students, for example, have gone through 2 or 3 years of college and they say, okay, I got my associate's degree, I'm good. And then we look for work. Some of them have to stay for a bachelor's because that's the job they want. For example, school teacher, you need a bachelor's degree, and they know it because we've informed them if they didn't know. And we keep them until they get their bachelor's degree, until they get a job and are quite satisfied with it.
Awesome. All right, another question. So thank you, parents, for asking questions. I think this is going to be the rest of our workshop, is answering your questions. So please don't hesitate to add them to the chat box. Okay, how do you help students have realistic goals? For example, a child who wants to be a police officer with health and mental issues that would prevent that.
That one's kind of a difficult thing because I don't want to tell the person that they can't have that goal, but we try really hard to get them as close to that goal as possible. Or we do sometimes have a reality check with the person and just say, okay, do you understand that this role, for example, a police officer, has to have this, 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 and this. Can you do those things? We make sure they understand what the job entails. We also sometimes ask them to do informational interviews. So go out with an adult or go out on their own and talk to a police officer, find out what they have to do with their job so that they're pretty informed and they can make that decision. We did have one person that wanted to be a police officer. And what we did was we made sure he found a job within the police department. That didn't mean he was a police officer holding a gun or going out after people, but he was able to be in that environment, and that's all he wanted. He didn't realize it, but he liked just having that environment around him. So that is an opportunity.
Awesome. Okay. Another question. Do you have to be at a certain functioning level to receive services through Voc Rehab?
As long as they're able to work. And I know some parents don't think of their student that way at the beginning, but we believe that everybody can work as long as they want to work. We do have some individuals that come to us that may have behavior issues that are a risk to the community, but we want to try and see if we can help so that they can do that, so they can find a job, even if it's very simple. At least that give them, the student or child, the opportunity to feel independent or become an adult. I have had a few clients that for only work 2 hours a week, and that's all that they could handle physically or mentally, and they're okay with that. And the parents are happy because that student is going out there and trying their best.
I like that a lot. Okay, this question is not on the chat box, but it's something that I've learned about one of the services that can be provided through Voc Rehab, and most likely through the pre-employment, is the discovery. So well, I'm not going to be able to do it any justice at all. Could you explain the discovery process to the parents?
Catherine, do you feel comfortable in discussing that? Okay. I think you might have to unmute, Catherine.
All right.
Okay, I mean, I can touch briefly on it. I've never conducted a discovery assessment, but essentially, a discovery assessment is a much more involved assessment. Generally, we utilize it for customized employment. So those are individuals whose disability is significant enough that they really need supports to go out and kind of customize and tailor a job for them rather than finding a job that's kind of just a good match for them. So it's a little bit more supportive than supported employment, which would have a job coach working with them. Um, I do know that one of the PreEts programs, Easter Seals, they, as part of their program, they do kind of a discovery assessment, but essentially it's a really involved assessment. So they spend, I don't know exactly how many hours, maybe Amanda knows, I think it's like 30 hours really getting to know the student and getting a comprehensive assessment on their interests. They develop different themes on what they're looking for as far as work and what their abilities are. So it's pretty cool. I wish we could do it a little bit more, but that is something that could be available if that's needed. And just going back to what we've talked about, the benefit of individualizing things. So a discovery is not going to be needed or appropriate for everyone, but it is something that's available for certain individuals who need that and can benefit from that.
And maybe you explained this at the beginning, but if I understand correctly, the person that is providing that discovery
Mhm.
support, they may take them into different situations, different employment situations to experience.
Yeah,
And
that's a good point. And yeah, I didn't bring that up. So yeah, so it's both kind of interview based and asking them questions and then also situational based to see, okay, in an actual job setting, how are they doing? Are they following directions? Can they do a couple steps at a time? Are they getting distracted so they can really get some hands-on experience on what work is going to look like for that individual and what kind of supports they're going to need?
Mhm. Perfect. All right. Any other questions, parents? We've got plenty of time here. Can you think of any common questions that you receive as counselors, either from the school or from the parents? Oh, think about that. I do have a question that just came through. So do you offer help, or would it be good to get your perspective when discussing where would be best as far as what would be best as far as graduation and future employment? For example, high school diploma versus certificate of completion, finishing at 18 with a certificate or 22 with diploma. So let me answer a little bit about that. So once a student graduates, they no longer and receive a diploma, they no longer qualify for post-high services through the district, but they can still be eligible for adult programs such as Voc Rehab. Really determining what is best. Well, now let's see, getting your perspective when discussing what would be best as far as graduation and future employment. I'm going to turn that over to you. I think I can talk about it a little bit, but you might have a little different twist than I would.
Okay, I mean, yeah, we could definitely explore what those different options would look like as far as work, whether they get their certificate of completion or diploma. A big part of what we do is make sure that the student or client can utilize informed choice. So talking about different options and making sure that they have the information to make a decision for themselves on what's going to be best. So we could definitely explore that. I think Maria brought up some good points with, yeah, thinking about if they decide to leave when they're 18, they might not be eligible for some other services through secondary education. So looking at that as well. I think Amanda wanted to say something. I don't know if she
Okay,
needs to be
I know I
muted.
got to keep unmuting people.
Okay, thank you. So when it comes to which is better, a high school diploma or certificate of completion, I have had parents um, want their child to get a high school diploma, and that is fine. But yes, the school district, once that diploma is in their hand, the school district is done. And so they would have to get adult services, and that would be through the state or the county. Um, if the person decides to go to post high, which would go through 20 to 22, that means the school district is responsible for a little bit longer. And again, they can do it up to them. I have had some students do post high, which is good for when it comes to learning life skills and job skills, things like that. Want to get their diploma afterwards, and so like the last year that they're at post high, they'll start working with the school district to get their high school diploma and through packets. And that's a hard program, the packets, because you have to be pretty disciplined to get through it, but that is a possibility too. So I would definitely talk to the parents and the student and ask them, are they ready for, and give them situations where they can talk about it and decide which pathway would be best for them.
And that diploma, they would go through adult education,
Yes.
right, and get their GED. So yeah, those services are still available through the district for students who do not receive their diploma after their senior year. So okay, a couple of questions that go hand in hand. One is, how do you get a counselor? But I think that goes hand in hand with, assume that I know nothing about this. What are the first steps that you would suggest I follow?
So if you're interested in the program, we would like it if you went to an orientation or watched the welcome video on our website. And I did put that in the group chat. You can find it on jobs.utah.gov. If you scroll down and go to people with disabilities and you scroll down again to vocational rehab, they do have the welcome video. And there is an application that needs to be filled out. Unfortunately, you can't do it on the computer. You have to print it and then fill it out. At that point, you would call our office, the local office in Provo, and ask to have a counselor assigned to them. And that's where you would tell the student, or tell the office in Provo where your student attends school. That way they can assign it to the correct counselor. If you're not ready at that point, but you do want to hear more about our program, you are more than welcome to call the office, arrange a meeting beforehand so that you can ask more questions. Or if you want to contact the school for their next IEP or 504 and ask them to invite Voc Rehab, or again, you can call and ask the office and say, my student goes to Orem High. I would really like a counselor there, and this is the meeting time and date. We would definitely get a person out there. You'd fill out the application. We would do an intake appointment, and the intake appointment would be going through the application. If you have any documentation that can help support it, be it Social Security verification, diagnostic information, or you need to have that information requested, then we can do that. After the person has done the intake, we do have 60 days from that application, from the day we receive the application, to determine eligibility. So it's important to get either doctors' names and phone numbers or the medical records or anything so that we can determine quickly. If we don't have anything by day 30 of those 60 days, we do call and kind of say, hey, what is it we need to do to get this information? If they are found eligible, that's when we start looking at what is it going to take to reach that employment goal. And it goes from there. And every counselor is a little bit different, but we want to make sure everybody has the same opportunities to get the education that they need or get the job supports that they need.
Awesome. And I'm just, Catherine Owen just added the phone number, and I just added the website link. So, okay, let's see, we've got everybody kicked in with questions, so that's awesome. Okay, could VR help a student get a volunteer position in the summer? This parent says her daughter is already with VR, started last fall. Should I expect my VR counselor to reach out to us from time to time? Or do I need to initiate all contact, like seeing what help she can get for the summer or getting social skills help?
We don't necessarily help with volunteer positions. We try and look at temporary work experiences, which some can be seen as volunteer, but we would like them to get a paycheck just so that the employee slash child student understands what it is to earn money and be able to contribute. So we would definitely see what they want to volunteer in, and we might have some resources available depending on what it is. When it comes to staying in contact with the VR counselor, we have the viewpoint of it's your case and you are the one in charge. But if you're not hearing from your VR counselor, you are more than welcome to call them and find out what's going on, and even find out if there's a communication error, why there's not communication. I know personally we are supposed to be contacting our clients every 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days. And so depending on where they are in our program, how often we contact the client or the client contacts us. It's very important to keep that communication line open. But I will say, after saying that, if I have a student that's in high school still, that's a junior or senior, and I'm not going to step on Alpine School District's toes with what services they can provide, but I won't be in contact as frequently because, again, I want to make sure they're getting all the services that Alpine can provide. But I will still contact even the parent and say, how are they doing? How are their grades? On what's going on? If there's anything that needs to happen between now and graduation, please let me know. So it's up to the counselor, but I definitely would call them and find out if there's more contact that needs to be done.
Okay, awesome. And I know with our situation with my daughter, we're contacted at least once a year.
Yeah.
If not more frequent than that. Okay. When do you recommend starting this process? So what age, I would imagine?
Catherine, you want that one?
That's a tough one. So yes, you can have your student apply as early as 14. And so, I mean, I think that there's some benefit to applying earlier if you're interested in accessing some of those pre-employment services. I would say at least around like 2 years before, but that's kind of my opinion. I don't know what Amanda would say.
As long as the student's ready to start looking for work, as long as the student's ready to start getting some help. I have a hard time with some of those students that the parents are really eager to get them services, which is great, but they kind of look at me like, no, thank you. I need to make sure that they're willing to work for it, because if they're not, if they're their own guardian at 18, they typically disappear until they realize there's something that they need, like help with tuition or help with trade school or help with finding a job. So if you feel that your student is looking at, hey, let's start looking at work. Hey, I really want to try these things. Bring them on. That's fine. But I do want them to be invested so that they know that we're here to help them.
All right, thank you. Okay, are there any out-of-pocket costs for any services through Voc Rehab?
So not necessarily, you would never pay us for anything, but Amanda touched a little bit on kind of financial needs. So we do have to do an assessment of finances, and if the student is under 18, we would have to look at the parent's income. So there could be what we call a required contribution, which means that you would have to pay for some services related to, restoration or training before we would be able to pay for other services. So that could include like doctor's appointments or co-pays or training costs. So that could be a scenario. A good thing is that once the student reaches the age of 18, we would just be looking at their income. So that definitely ends up changing things pretty quickly.
And I think that's a good point to bring out too, is once an individual turns 18, they become their own household. And so programs that are based on household income, once the student's 18, they no longer look at the family's income. Even if the student still lives at home, they just look at the individual's income.
Right.
So
Even
that
if
helps them.
they aren't their own guardian, we would still just look
Mhm,
at their
mhm.
income. So yeah.
So that's something important to know if you're looking at Social Security or Medicaid, if those are services that your young adult might need, supports that your young adult might need. That's something to keep into consideration. Okay, what about if a student is failing high school? Are there any resources or personal tutorials, so tutors to help them graduate? One, I a partial answer to this is I know that the program under Department of Workforce Services, the Workforce Innovations and Opportunity Act, WIOA, that I believe that they can help a student work towards graduation. Um, they serve students who are disadvantaged, and a student who has a 504 plan or an IEP is considered disadvantaged. And so that would be a resource that they could reach out to for support. What about services directly under Voc Rehab?
We, excuse me, we can help with some tutoring. Typically, there, for example, at UVU, they have the SCUP department, which is the tutoring department. They can tutor anybody at any age as long as they have a tutor in that subject. They have informed us that if it's a high school student or um, even a junior high student, actually, as long as they have curriculum to present to do the work. So the tutor is not bringing in homework, it's the student bringing homework to them, that they can do that. I believe it's $15 an hour in the Orem Provo area. If it's outside of that, it's $18 an hour. Voc Rehab can pay for that if that's definitely something that will help them graduate. Um, we would just arrange it with SCUP.
Okay, and I'm trying to get their link. I'll put it, there we go, in the chat. All right. Let's see. So do you offer help, or would it be good to get your perspective when discussing what would be best as far as graduation? Oh, sorry, I scrolled way too high. Apologize for that. My computer is being super slow. Okay, if a college student is working a part-time job and getting help with tuition through Voc Rehab, is there a cap on the income they can make in order to still receive services?
There is. So the financial form that we do would explain that. Sorry. They have a formula on there, and typically if the person's working part-time, they're not going to make enough to really make a big dent in the contribution. If they're working a full-time job and they're making, let's say, $17 an hour and they're still going to school, that we might have a financial contribution, but we would look at it and negotiate it so that either maybe they pay their own gas to and from school once classes start again like that. Maybe they pay their own books. Maybe they pay their parking pass, anything like that. We try and help as much as we can, but know also that all people, no matter what age, if they do go on to continued education, such as trade school or college, university, we do ask that the person applies for a Pell Grant, the FAFSA account, because we need some type of what we call comparable benefits. So some type of other source of payment. So it's not all on Voc Rehab, but if they get the Pell Grant, then yes, we would have asked them to use that for tuition, and then we would cover whatever else that they can't cover. If they're denied the Pell Grant, which typically happens from age 18 to 24, we just need proof that they have applied and they were denied, and then we can step in and take care of it. But if they're working and if they make a reasonable amount of money, they might have a small contribution, but I wouldn't worry about it too much unless they're making a lot of money and still wanting Voc Rehab to pay everything.
Okay, awesome. Okay. Is a temporary work experience appropriate as a summer job for a teen who is age 16 or older to gain experience in a desired job area? or see if they actually like doing a certain job. Our temporary work experience is more about gaining experience, earning money, and learning how to do a job rather than be matched in an area of interest.
Yes, it is. I believe, Catherine, correct me if I'm wrong, there's 2 work experiences, 2 or 3 that we can do, or 1 per summer, for our students, for our transition youth. So it would be between 4 to 8 weeks, I believe, of just the experience, and they do have a job coach there that's helping them learn. And that's typically where the parents enjoy the summer jobs. If we can find something that their students willing to do, that we'd look at temporary work experience.
Yeah, I would just say if you are interested in something like that for your student, to get involved with Voc Rehab early to start, because those can take a while to get figured out, and especially if there's a job coach, to get that all coordinated.
Right, thank you. Okay, a question back to the FAFSA. This parent says, I believe the FAFSA requires at least part-time schooling. What if the students can only handle 1 or 2 classes?
They do ask for part-time schooling. How the FAFSA looks at it is, for example, if you get awarded, let's say the full amount for the year is $6,000, and you start school and you can only do 6 credits, FAFSA will only pay for that 6 credits. They won't give you the extra money. So a lot of students think that they can pull in 12 credit hours, because that's what we would prefer is full time, to get the full amount. But again, once you shorten the 12 to 6, it'll only pay that 6. Now, if it's part-time schooling, they can only handle. We do ask that there's some type of letter by a doctor or a psychologist or something explaining why they cannot handle more than that. That's not saying they can't go to college, just saying due to anxiety, for example, due to anxiety, this person can't handle this many credit hours. Can you please accept the fact that they need to go part-time? Typically that works, then we're okay. But we do still have to have that FAFSA either saying they were accepted or denied.
All right, some great questions. We still have about a little less than 15 minutes. If you have any more questions that you want to put in the chat box. Really quick, I forgot to introduce myself at the beginning, which is kind of funny, but so my name's Maria Wiscombe, and I work for the Utah Parent Center, but I'm a parent consultant. My contract is to work with families in Alpine School District. So I work closely with the special ed department. I also am very familiar with the 504 coordinators. I work closely with the transition team, and we provide services and information to families from age 0 into adulthood. And a lot of conversations I've had lately with families are around adult resources. What resources are available as my child gets ready to graduate or transition out of the post-high program. How do we access services through colleges, through the accessibility centers, employment supports, things like that. So I just added the link to my contact information in the chat box, and you're more than welcome to email or call me, and I can help connect you to resources exactly like what Amanda and Catherine have been talking about with Voc Rehab and some of the PreEts programs underneath them, as well as a variety of topics or resources. One thing I can do, since I don't work for the district, so resources that you'll get from the district will be state and federally funded programs, which are awesome. And I have a list of those. In fact, there's a transition resource list attached to the website that I put on earlier, the Google site. But since I don't work for the district and work for the Parent Center, I can also help connect you to private resources. So yeah, don't hesitate to reach out to me if you need further resources than what we've talked about. Okay, I'm gonna launch a poll. the Parent Center is funded by grants, and so you filling out this poll would be super helpful for our grants, as well as know how you feel about the information that was shared tonight. So I'm going to launch that, but we still have a few more questions that need to be answered. So I'm going to get that ready to go. And if you don't mind answering that quickly, that would be awesome. Okay, if our student will definitely need extended job help through DSPD, should we wait until we are off the DSPD waitlist to begin the process? That is a great question.
Yeah, I can
Want me
take
to-
that one.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you definitely don't need to wait until you're off the wait list if extended supports are needed. So, most likely the student would be accessing what we call supported employment services. So, Voc Rehab would kind of start that process and then transfer it to DSPD for long-term supports. And even on the wait list, they're eligible for long-term supports. There are some funding issues currently, but we can provide job coaching for someone through supported employment for up to 2 years or until they achieve an 80-20 level of support. So they're able to work independently 80% of the time and they need 20% support. So short answer is no, I would start the process when the student is, expressing interest in work and motivated to kind of move forward with that.
Well, and right now that is, I believe, the only service that is available to individuals on the wait list is the possible supported employment if they need that level of support. So yeah, so you have access to that even on the wait list. Okay, another question, would tutoring services for a UVU student be available if the student is struggling with a certain subject? One thing I want to step in on that, one thing you might want to check with is the Accessibility Center and working with them. Other than the Accessibility Center doesn't communicate a whole lot with parents, but they will with the students. So you'll want your young adult to talk with the Accessibility Center. But through Voc Rehab, are there tutoring services available? I would imagine if the UVU student is in services, what would the situation need to be?
If we have a student that's at UVU that they're struggling, for example, in math, we would definitely contact SCUP and ask them if they have math tutoring, whatever level that is, or English or science. Most of them have students that have, their qualification is the person has to have taken that class and passed it to be able to be a tutor. So I don't see that being a problem, but some of our students have classes that are a little odd. I have one that's in sound and audio, and SCUP doesn't have one for that, a tutor. So typically then we would talk to the teacher to find out if there's a student in the class that my client's in, and if they'd be willing to sign up to be a tutor for him. So that's kind of negotiating between the student, the teacher, and the client. So that is a possibility as well.
Awesome. All right, we've got a few more minutes. I think we've touched on most of the questions or all of the questions that have been asked in the chat box. If there's anything that we haven't answered completely, or there's never a dumb question, so feel free to ask those questions that you thought might be too simple. And thank you to those of you who have filled out the poll. That's much appreciated. So one of the parents said, my brain is full. I appreciate the time you ladies took to help clear some of the fog. And I found that, information is empowering, and some of this information you may not need right now, but it will be empowering to know what resources there are for you down the road. But then at the same time, if you're in the thick of it and your young adult needs more support, especially with seeking employment and figuring out what they're going to do with their lives, Voc Rehab is a great resource.
And again, you are more than welcome to call and just ask questions. I kind of laugh because some parents don't understand it. The IEPs that were being talked about, it might not have may not be there, but they have a transition checklist that you're signing. And I have to remind the parents that you may not have heard of us because you just have been hit by the floodgates of how your student is doing and how they're struggling, or how, you know, things are looking at the school and academics. But we are here, and our whole goal is to make sure that the students and parents know that we are here. I don't like it when a student comes to me, well, an adult comes to me and says, I never knew you existed, because it makes me sad that we couldn't have helped them at a younger age to overcome some of these barriers.
Yeah, it is. It's frustrating to me too as well. And don't hesitate to ask more detailed questions at your IEPs. From the time your student turns 14, they should have a transition plan as part of their IEP. And like Amanda said, they have a transition checklist that they should be going over at every IEP meeting, your annual IEP meetings. So don't hesitate to ask. Okay, one more question. If you are not happy with your counselor, can you request a new one?
You can. I would hope that you would communicate with the current counselor that you have, just explain what feelings you're having and why you're not satisfied. Most of them, all of them, have a supervisor that you would need to contact as well with concerns, and they would try and resolve it, or they would try and find a counselor that would fit your needs. So if you've tried talking to your counselor and they're not giving you what you need, I'd ask them who their supervisor is and speak to them about your concerns. So yeah, you can change counselors.
All right, I think we're done. No more questions? Thank you so much, parents, for all your questions. They've been super great, and I think definitely have help answer questions for other parents. And thank you so much to Amanda and to Catherine for spending their time sharing information about vocational rehabilitation. It's been super informative, and hopefully this gives a lot of parents a good platform to jump off of and get going with their students.
Well, thank you for the
So,
opportunity.
you bet. All right. Well, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your week. It's Friday tomorrow. Woohoo.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. See
Thank you.
everybody.
See ya. Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.